they don't really want you to come up and help them. So Peter, in the Roots shirt there, invited a farmer up to help mix the natural pesticide, oil, soapy water, so that he could know how to do it when we left. So that was fun. And then these are just more pictures of when they were here. This is one of our colleagues, Jacob Dennis. He teaches in the agriculture department. He's been there, I think, this will be his 5th year teaching there, so he's been there longer than us, but he is such a blessing to our school there. He is like always 10 steps ahead of me and trying to think about all the other projects that we could be doing or should be doing on campus. So if you ever think about Liberia and our teachers, pray for him that we can keep him forever, because we want him to stay. And with the payment, you know, we're having problems paying our teachers, as we talked about in church. They're always looking for other areas. So we pray that Jacob would stay and continue to invest in the students, because not only is he great in speaking and he knows the scientific things, he is a Christian and he loves those students like they were his own. And so he's a blessing to have there. And then these are just some of the other people on campus. One huge blessing from the Maryland students coming was that they collected agriculture textbooks and brought them over for us. So our students didn't have a single agriculture book in the library at all. So can you imagine trying to learn without any books? You know, we don't have good internet, we don't have you know, good electricity, so we don't have computer labs where they can just go sit and read all these things. So textbooks are vital for their learning, and our students were begging and itching for textbooks. And this is just one example of our students, Augustine. He made the ginger candy back there, by the way. He would just come into my office and stand there and literally just stand and read books for like hours. He would forget to sit down sometimes, and he would have this smile on his face when he was reading. And he'd just be taking notes. And it is just awesome that they actually have this now they can learn these things themselves. They don't have to ask somebody to help me with this, They can do it themselves. And it's a big change in the way that they learn and how they take ownership of that learning. We also do professional development with the other teachers on campus. We work in the agriculture department, but there's also an education department, business department, and theology department. And so we have a passion for working with teachers and training teachers to get, so that we can get really engaging classrooms, so that the students are engaging all their senses when they're in the classroom. They're developing their critical thinking skills so that they're more prepared once they graduate to go out and start their own businesses or problem solve and things like that. So we work with training teachers, and of course we have to get them moving and doing crazy things when we're doing teacher trainings. So this is just some of the teachers that we get to work with at LICC. And then another big event we did this past year was a spiritual warfare conference. So in Liberia there is a lot of juju is what we call it. So there's a lot of belief in lots of different deities and gods, and a lot of like worshiping of the devil and things like that. And so it really affects community and churches and a lot of parts of the culture and life there. And so what the school does is they host this spiritual warfare conference each year, and they bring pastors in and community leaders just to try and talk about these things, because they're not often talked about. A lot of times we just kind of like, oh yeah, that's happening. We don't really want to talk about it. So it's an opportunity for us to talk about it and think about how can we love those people who are in our communities, and how can we prepare the pastors to be able to talk about these things in their churches. And we talked during this spiritual warfare conference about all the chains that we have in Liberia that we kind of feel like is holding us back in our churches. And one of the ones that I got to talk about was this difference between charity and development, and how sometimes and I've wrote an article about it, some of you may have read it recently, but it was talking about how sometimes as pastors, even in Liberia, we just want to give to the people around us, but we're not encouraging them to step up and start their farm and start, come alongside them and build something. So we talked about that and how we can address those things in our churches there, how we can change attitudes, mindsets, so that we're thinking about how we can build this ourselves, rather than just looking for someone else to give it to us. And so we hosted a few other pastors from Kenya who came and helped with this. So this is Pastor Frederick and Pastor Clinton. And they were a big help to come and talk about some of these difficult issues because they have some of the similar things going on in Kenya that they talk about there. So it was great to have them and their wisdom there. This is you, right?
Yeah, so as a part of the school, we had chapel Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 12 to 1. And that was just a time for the students to come together and to sort of have a service, do some worship together. And one of those days every week, we got into mentor groups. I had a mentor group assigned to me, Anna had a mentor group assigned to her, and all the other faculty as well had mentor groups. And we got to just meet with these 8, 9, 10 students every week and just talk about what's going on. You know, what are struggles, what are things that are going well, what are successes. And Anna and I both decided to go through, take that time to go through Romans with them as well. So it was a great blessing to be able to be closer with a lot of students that I didn't know because they aren't in our agriculture department, and to be able to help guide them, and at the same time they helped to guide us as well. As we were going through Romans, it's just simply a conversation, and I think that there's a lot of times some confusion on what the Bible says or what the Bible doesn't say, and so going through Romans together, we were able to sort of work that out as a group, and that's good for our students, because a lot of times, of course it happens here too, the Christian faith can be a mile wide and an inch thick, right? Mm-hmm. So for us to be able to really dig in there and go through, one chapter at a time, and just talk about it for a while was a great experience for me and for them. In May, I got a chance to go with Pastor Bill and Pastor Frederick from Kenya, because he was there at the time, and Kona, our supervisor for the Agriculture Research Center, and Dr. Camus, who is the president of LICC. We got a chance to go to the men's conference for the United Liberian Inland Church, ULIC. And that is the church that is associated with the college. And so what we did was, the conference was being held out in Blule, Gblola, I think. And that's a rural town out in Nimba County. And so we got to go, what we say, out into the bush. And we had over 200 men show up, and the theme of the conference was recommissioning ourselves to do the Lord's work. And one of the things that struck me there, I got to sit up front because I was actually doing a presentation, one of the presentations, on doing business God's way and doing business to help our ministries and to be a ministry. And I was sitting there was another person doing their presenting, and I saw the little kids must have been getting out of school, and as always, they come to see what is the commotion. We were worshiping, sometimes singing, and they come to see what is the commotion, what's going on, and everybody's there. And then often what happens as well in these times is that somebody stands up and goes and sort of, shoos them away. Get them out, get out of here. And it struck me at that moment, it was like, wow, we have all these grown men humbling themselves and worshiping the Lord and singing together. We should be inviting these sons and daughters to come and see this, to come and be led by this. And so we're hopeful to be a part of a men's conference next year, and we were talking, and we're hopeful that we can do something like that, where children, or at least sons, are also invited to do that next year as well. All right, so we had many Farming God's Way conferences and trainings throughout the year. Some have been out in villages and communities, and some have been right at the Ark, and people have come to see us. It's a great time for us to be able to, as Anna said earlier, get into the Word, but do it in a way where we're also teaching something practically as well. This is a picture of Michael, our head field supervisor, who does a lot of the work in the field with his team, planting, weeding, harvesting, all those things. And he here is presenting in a community that is just down the road. They like to call it Palm Wine Village for obvious reasons. They produce a lot of palm wine, and they sell a lot of palm wine. And we're hoping to sort of be a part of some ministry there, but also hoping to teach more about farming God's way. One of the things that is often done in Liberia and throughout the tropical world is what they call in Liberia following the bush. So you might have 50 acres of land, but only 10 or even less of that is cultivated because you have to allow the rest of it to grow. Okay, because when it's growing, then you chop everything down in another 10 acres spot, and that becomes, and you burn it, and that becomes the fertility, that becomes the fertilization, and we call it slash and burn. Yes. The problem with that is it's not very efficient, right? We have 50 acres of land, we want to cultivate all 50 acres if we can. And so we teach about how God grows that, does growing himself, and how we can do it ourselves. One of our big themes, and I love it because I'm so interested in business as well, is entrepreneurship and business in agriculture. We see at the Ark, our biggest research and demonstration is how to do agriculture profitably. Here you can see pictures of our staff and colleagues coming together. Every Wednesday we started a professional development where we would do